Picture this. You are standing on the top deck of a container ship that is 400 meters long, somewhere in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Above you, container stacks the size of city blocks rise into a clear morning sky. Below you, somewhere down inside the steel deckhouse that climbs 8 stories above the stern, are 22 people, engineers, officers, deckhands, a cook. They are halfway through a contract that will keep them on this ship for 9 months. They will not see their front door, their kids, their bedroom, or their local pub until that contract ends. The ship itself costs roughly $200 million to build, and right now, for the people inside it, it is home. So the question is, how on earth do they actually live like that? How does a person make a working life inside steel and weather for 9 months at a time? That is exactly what we are going to find out today. Hi, my name is Jack, and this is Life at Sea. This is the channel where we go inside the lives of the people who live and work on the water. Now, the ship we are talking about today is a very specific kind of beast. We are not talking about a small coastal feeder running a milk run between regional ports. We are not talking about a tug, or a fishing boat, or a research vessel. We are talking about a fully loaded, ultra-large container vessel, 400 meters long, 60 meters wide, roughly $200 million to build, sailing the Asia-Europe trade with a crew of around 22 people on contracts that can run up to 9 months at a stretch. And what life looks like inside that deck house is genuinely more interesting than most people on shore would ever guess. Let us start with the reality of 9 months at sea on a ship like this. Let us start with the numbers, because the numbers are what make this strange. A modern ultra-large container vessel running the Asia to Europe trade, the busiest commercial shipping corridor on the planet, will typically cover a one-way leg in about 35 days with 5 to 10 port calls along the way. That was the picture before late 2023. Since the attacks on shipping in the Red Sea began that November, most of the major operators have rerouted around the Cape of Good Hope, which adds another 10 to 14 days each way. So a single round trip on the Asia to Europe lane is now well over 2 months, and a 9-month contract gets you about 4 of those round trips back to back. Now here's the part most people do not realize. When the ship arrives in a port, the crew does not really get off, not the way they used to. Industry analysts at the United Nations have put the depreciation of a modern container ship at roughly $1,142 an hour just for the steel sitting there, never mind fuel and wages. That means every hour at the berth is expensive, and the entire economic logic of the modern terminal is built around getting the ship turned around and back out to sea as quickly as possible. When the mission to seafarers ran the comparison, they found that 20 years ago, the turnaround time in Rotterdam for the largest container ship was from 18 to 36 hours. Today, for a 21,000 container ultra-large vessel, it can be done in 8 hours. As Professor Helen Sampson at Cardiff University has documented, if you are in port for 8 hours and you are working a watch system, the chances are 2/3 of that time you are either working or sleeping. The Seafarers Center visit, the trip into town, the dinner ashore, those are largely gone for the modern container ship crew. This means that for the people inside the deckhouse, the entire 9-month contract is essentially one long voyage. The ship is the office, the ship is the gym, the ship is the bedroom, the dining room, the social club, and the place you call your family from. You are not commuting in and out of it, you are living inside it continuously for the better part of a year, surrounded by 22 people you did not choose, in conditions entirely controlled by weather, the ship's motion, and the watch bill that says when you sleep and when you do not. How that actually works, day after day, week after week, is more interesting than anyone outside the industry tends to assume. So let us look at the superstructure and how the deck house is designed to feel like home. The accommodation block on a modern ultra-large container ship sits at the stern, rising 6 or 7 decks above the main deck level. The bridge sits at the top. Just below that are the captain and chief engineer cabins, with day rooms and offices attached because senior officers need somewhere to do paperwork that is not their bedroom. Below them are the deck and engine officers, and below them, the ratings. Then comes the mess and the galley, then the offices and the laundry, and finally the changing rooms at deck level where work boots come off before anyone goes inside. Under the Maritime Labor Convention of 2006, which came into force in 2013, every crew member on a vessel of this size gets a private cabin. On modern Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, and CMA-CGM ships, almost all of them have a private bathroom attached, hot water, air conditioning, a desk, a bed, and a porthole if you are lucky with the assignment. The cabin is not large, roughly the size of a small studio flat, but it is yours for the whole contract, and any veteran chief officer will tell you that the cabin is the difference between getting through 9 months and quietly losing your mind. The cabin is where you sleep. It is where you call home. It is where the contract becomes livable. Now, let us talk about the watch system that the entire day is built around. The vast majority of merchant ships sailing internationally run a 4-on, 8-off rotation. The chief mate stands the 4 to 8 watch, morning and evening. The second officer stands the 12 to 4 watch, midnight and afternoon. The third officer stands the 8 to 12. Each officer is on the bridge for 2 4-hour stints in every 24 hours, with an able seaman on lookout, and the rest of the day is theirs to sleep, eat, do paperwork, exercise, or call home. The engineers run a similar pattern, although on most modern ultra-large vessels, the engine room is approved for unmanned machinery space at night, which means the engineers work daytime hours and stand by for alarms after dark. Meals are scheduled around the watch handovers. The relieving watch eats first, then takes over, then the off-going watch sits down. Honestly, the rhythm of a well-run watch system is its own kind of beautiful. After a couple of weeks at sea, your body stops asking what time it is and starts asking what watch you are on. Sleep happens in 2 chunks. You wake when the cabin phone rings and the second mate says you have 10 minutes to get to the bridge. Most veteran chief engineers will tell you plainly that the watch is what gives a long contract its shape. Without it, the days would just fall apart. And then there are the amenities the new generation of these ships actually has. This is the part that genuinely surprises people. On a modern Maersk methanol vessel like the Alexandra Maersk, which the company unveiled at Felixstowe last year, the crew has access to a gym, a sauna, a cinema room, a games room with foosball and ping pong, and yes, a swimming pool on the top deck of the accommodation block. The Triple E class ships, Maersk's flagship 18,000 container series built in the early 2010s, have the same kit. The Moscow Maersk has a small cinema, a games room, a deck pool, and a gym. Hapag-Lloyd's new 24-ship dual fuel order, signed in late 2024 for delivery from 2027 onward, comes with the same standard of accommodation. The major Japanese deep-sea operators build to similar standards on their flagships. The kit is broadly comparable across the major Western and Asian operators, with cultural variations in how strict the regime feels day to day. And here is the historical comparison that matters. On a 1977-built European container ship that one former master wrote about, the accommodation included a sauna, a bar, a games room with foosball and darts, and cabins spacious enough for officers' families to come along for months at a time. Today's minimum under the Maritime Labor Convention is a private cabin with an ensuite. The kit is genuinely better. The cabins are smaller. That trade-off is the modern container ship in one sentence. Now let us look at the small things that turn a steel box into a home. This is the part I find most interesting, honestly, because the gear is the gear, but the small habits are what people remember from a contract. First, there is the coffee. Almost every experienced officer travels with their own kettle, a sealed tin of instant coffee from home, and a specific brand of biscuits they trust to last the voyage. The cabin coffee setup is sacred. The galley makes coffee for the mess, but the cabin coffee is yours, made the way you like it, in the cup you brought from home. Second, there are the photographs. If you walked down the alleyway of a modern container ship and looked into the cabins, almost every door would show the same thing taped or magnetized to the bulkhead beside the bunk. There would be photographs of family, of kids, of the dog. Sometimes the front door of the house would be there too. Sometimes a picture of a wife or husband taken on the morning the ship sailed. It is the most consistent piece of cabin decoration on any commercial vessel in the world. Third, there are the cabin slippers. Boots come off at the changing room before you go upstairs. Inside the accommodation, almost every crew member is in slippers. It is a small thing, but it is the moment your body knows it is off duty. Fourth, there is the calendar. Some people keep it digital. A lot of people keep it physical, taped to the cabin desk, with the days crossed off one at a time. Each cross marks another day remaining until sign-off. Most old chief mates will tell you plainly that the calendar is half the contract. You do not survive 9 months by thinking about month 9. You survive it by crossing off Tuesday and then crossing off Wednesday. Fifth, there is the barbecue. When the weather is decent and the ship is mid-ocean, the cook will sometimes bring trays up to one of the upper decks on a Sunday afternoon, and the entire off-watch crew will eat outside. There will be steaks, sausages, beer if the master allows it, and the engineers and the deck crew mix together for an hour or two. It is the small ritual that breaks the rhythm of the week. Sixth, there is the crew bar. Most major operators allow a small amount of beer per person per day. 2 cans is fairly standard. The bar room exists on almost every Maersk, Hapag-Lloyd, and CMA CGM ship, and a couple of beers with the engineers on a Saturday night is the social spine of a long contract. And seventh, and this is the genuinely new one, there is the video call home at the end of watch. The rollout of Starlink across the merchant fleet since 2023 has changed the contract more in 2 years than the previous 20 years did combined. Crowley's vessels, most of Maersk's, and most of the major Western operators now have proper broadband at sea. The video call home is now a daily ritual. Honestly, the difference that has made is difficult to overstate. Now, look. This would not be a life at sea video if we were not completely straight with you about both sides. So let us be honest. The life I have just described is not all swimming pools and saunas and Sunday afternoon barbecues. The hardest part of a 9-month contract is not the work. It is the family separation. And the seafarer community talks about this openly now in a way it did not a decade ago. The 2020 Mission to Seafarers study found that more than 25% of seafarers reported symptoms of depression. The International Seafarers Welfare and Assistance Network, which runs the Seafarer Helpline, reports that workplace stress is now the single most common issue people contact them about, followed by worry, followed by low mood. The Seafarers Happiness Index in the first quarter of 2025 sat at 6.8 out of 10. That is steady, but not great. The shore leave situation, as we touched on earlier, is genuinely worse than it was a generation ago. Professor Sampson and the Mission to Seafarers have documented this directly. 20 years ago, an officer on the Europe-Asia run could expect a day or two ashore in Rotterdam or Hamburg. Today, with 8-hour turnarounds on the largest container ships, that is gone. You arrive at 3 in the morning, you work cargo through the day, you sail by midnight. Most ports the modern container ship crew sees are seen from the deck. The crew size point matters here too. The drop from 40 or 50 crew on a 1980s container ship to 20 or 25 today, made possible by automation and integrated alarm systems, has not eliminated the work. It has redistributed it across fewer shoulders. Any old chief mate will tell you the same thing. The watches are the same length, the paperwork is heavier, the maintenance burden is the same ship, just shared by fewer hands. And then there is the simple fact that you are living and working with the same 22 people for 9 months in a confined space. When the crew dynamic is good, it is one of the closest workplaces in the world. When it is bad, there is nowhere to go. The Danish Maritime Authority's bullying and harassment survey found that nearly a quarter of seafarers who had reported issues saw no change afterwards. The industry is genuinely working on this now. There is the welfare network we just mentioned, the maritime unions, the ongoing review of the international training standards, the rollout of well-being officers on some fleets, and the mandatory internet provisions in the updated Maritime Labor Convention. But it is improving from a low base. Anyone who tells you a 9-month contract is easy has almost certainly never actually done one. Where the industry is heading is worth a quick word, because it shapes what life on these ships will look like for the next decade. The fuel transition is the biggest single change. Hapag-Lloyd's 24 ship order, signed in late 2024 for roughly $4 billion combined, runs on liquefied natural gas with a dual fuel system, and it is ammonia ready as well. Maersk is going methanol, with the Alexandra Maersk and her sister ships running on green methanol on both their main and auxiliary engines. CMA CGM is moving similarly. For the crew, this means new training, new safety drills, new hazards to manage. The engineers in particular will spend the next 5 years learning fuel systems their predecessors never touched. The connectivity transition is the second biggest. Starlink at sea has gone from a curiosity in 2022 to standard kit on most Western-operated fleets in 2026, and the mental health effect of being able to video call home at the end of every watch, rather than once a week through a rationed satellite link, is genuinely significant. And the crew size question is, surprisingly, stabilizing. The cuts from 40 or 50 down to 20 or 25 are about as deep as the industry can go without breaking watch-keeping rules and safety margins. All of this, when you think about it, is genuinely remarkable, because the trend now is going the other way. Better living standards to retain mariners, because the talent pipeline across all flag states is genuinely tight. So that is the picture. It is 22 people on a 400-meter ship, 9 months at a time, with a private cabin, a watch system, a cook, a gym, a pool, a sauna, a cinema, a few rituals that make the days livable, and a video link home at the end of every shift. The amenities are better than they have ever been. The cabin sizes are smaller than they used to be. The shore leave is largely gone. The work is harder per person than it was a generation ago. And the people who do it are doing it for the same reasons people have always gone to sea. The ship is genuinely impressive. The life inside it is harder than it looks, and easier than people on shore assume. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to Life at Sea for a lot more content just like this. And if you have ever worked a contract at sea or known someone who did, drop it in the comments below. I would genuinely love to hear it. Thanks for watching.